Yo, what is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Homie Hector here. So today we got this 2007 Kia Sportage with a 2.0 liter engine. Now the customer calls me on this one because she said she was driving on the freeway. The car started stalling. She made it out of the freeway, but eventually the car turned off. Now she said the same thing happened a couple hours before this. She called the tow truck. They put a battery in there. They tested the starter, the alternator, and everything checked out good. So they sent her on the way, and the same thing happened again. So a bunch of lights on the cluster, the car stalling, and eventually dies. I'm suspecting a bad alternator. Now the alternator lives down there. Now just doing a visual, I can see the belt. It doesn't look like a new alternator. The belt doesn't seem to be loose. So visually everything looks good. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is do a quick test on the battery to make sure that we didn't get a defective battery. Then we can run some tests on the charging system and figure this one out. Just going to be using this little top-down, I think it's a BT300. Now I like this one because it has a little printer. You can give the customer a printout, so if the battery tests bad, they can take it back to wherever they got it installed and say, hey, battery's bad, give me another one. Alright, so let me hook it up and let's run a quick test on this battery. Okay, pretty easy to use battery test. We're gonna hit enter, and this is regular flooded, and we got 700 CCA. So we're gonna use CCA. You can use SAE, you can use some JIS, some DIN, some BCI, EN. So we're gonna go with CCA, and it's 700 cold cranking amps, just like the one from yesterday. And it's gonna test it real quick. So it has 615 amps, 12.9 volts. So it's not fully charged, 4.87 internal resistance, rated at 700. Okay, so we can print this out now. Let's do a cranking test, and then we'll do a charging system test. Cranking normal, cranking time 777 milliseconds, 1128 volts. So cranking is normal, and it's gonna print that out too. Cranking normal. And now we can do the charging test. Loaded test, increase speed. It's not gonna reach inside, so I'm just gonna leave it here. Alright, so why do we have low charging voltage? Right now that I was doing the test, the battery light wasn't on. So this could be an intermittent problem with the alternator, or we can have a problem somewhere else. So let's go look at a diagram, see how the system works, see how it's wired, and then we can run some tests. Alright, so let's take a look at the charging system right here. So this is a fuse box that's under the hood, and we have an ignition 1 fusible link that's 30 amps, horn fuse that's 15 amps. Alright, so this fuse link feeds the ignition switch, and when you turn the key on or put it in start, it feeds the cluster fuse, which is 10 amps, under the left side of the dash fuse box. And from there, on that green wire, it feeds the cluster to the charge indicator. So this is a battery light that turns on the dash. And on the other side we have a white wire, and that white wire goes up here, comes up here, all the way to the alternator. This pink wire right here comes from the horn fuse, 15 amps. I know we should have power here on the red wire that comes straight from the battery. We should have power here on this pink wire because it comes from the fuse and it's hot at all times. And we're going to see what we have on this white wire on this L terminal. Alright, so we can go to the underhood fuse box and do some checks right there. Check the horn fuse and check this fusible link 30 amps. We can go to the underdash fuse box, check this cluster fuse, make sure this light is turning on, and then go to the alternator and do some checks there. We should have power here, power here. If we have a ground on this white wire, which goes all the way to the charge light, then this battery light is going to turn on. So it shouldn't have a ground because that's going to indicate that we're not charging. Alright, so let's go back to the car, do some checks, and see what we have. Alright, so we got the horn 15 amp fuse right there. On the bottom right, we got the 120 alternator fusible link. And then up here, second from the right, we got the 30 amp ignition 1 fusible link. Alright, so we can do some checks right here and see what we find. Alright, so this is a 15 amp fuse right here for the horn. And as you can see, we got 12 volts right there. And we got 12 volts on there. Alright, so that 15 amp horn fuse is good. This right here is the fusible link for the alternator, 120 amps. And we got 12 volts right there, and we got 12 volts on this side. Now on this 30 amp fuse link, we got to take off that little top cover so we can test it, or we can remove it and just do a continuity test. And let me go ahead and take it off so we can test it. Seems to be intact. And we got voltage on this side. We'll do the other side, and we got battery voltage. There we go. Okay, now everything here checked out okay. So let's go inside and check out that 10 amp fuse for the cluster. I already know it's good, but let's just go check it. Okay, that cluster fuse lives in here. Okay, so looking at this chingadera right here, you can see our cluster fuse right there. 1, 2, 3, 4th from the top. Alright, so this fuse right here, 10 amps, should have power with the key on. There's a key on right there. We got battery voltage. And we got battery voltage on that side. You can even hear the difference in tone from power to ground. Now let's go down to the alternator and do some checks down there. Alright, and as you can see, we got battery voltage right there coming straight from the battery. Alright, now I'm gonna unplug this connector to check what we have on these wires. So there's nothing on this one. And this one has power. Alright, now on the white wire, we have nothing right now, but we should have power on that wire with the key on. Can you go turn the key on? Don't start it, just turn the key on. And on the white wire, we got battery voltage with the key on. Okay, one more thing really quick. On this white wire, we have battery voltage with the key on that comes from the cluster fuse, goes through the light bulb, and comes all the way over here. So right now with the connector unplugged, that battery light is not going to be on because we have an open circuit. So let me see, turn the key on. And as you can see right there, we have no battery light. So I'm going to go and I'm going to provide my own ground on the white wire, and we should see that battery light come on. And that right there tells us that the circuit all the way from the alternator to this 10 amp fuse is good. So if we had a problem with this battery light not coming on or anything with the circuit, that's a test you can do right there to verify everything's good. So the alternator is getting everything it needs to work, but it's supplying low charging voltage. Alright, so I'm going to be checking the signal on the white wire with my scope. Right now the battery light is on. This thing is not charging. So we're going to compare this reading to what it looks like after with the new alternator on there. Okay, so I am on a 20 volt scale. That's key on right there. Now let's start it up.
A few moments later.
First things first, disconnect the negative battery cable. You should already know that. You should also know righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. We're just gonna move it out of the way. Now we gotta go down to the alternator. Alright, I got everything buttoned up. I got the new alternator in, the belt's nice and tight, everything's good to go. I also went ahead and cleaned the battery posts and the terminals. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start it up. We shouldn't have a battery light as long as this alternator is not defective. I'm going to keep you on the scope so that we can see what this signal is supposed to look like. You can see right here we got battery voltage on that white wire. Alright, so I got everything buttoned up. I'm about to go ahead and test it with this top-down battery tester. It's the battery, the starting, and the charging system. So we're gonna go battery test, regular, CCA 700, and it's testing the battery right there. Healthy, 100%, 725 amps, charge 80%. Alright, so we're gonna hit enter and it should print this part out. Beautiful. Now we're gonna go and do the cranking test, and now it says to start the engine, so let me start it up real quick. Now it's testing that part of the system, cranking time. And now we're going to do the charging test. Testing. So there it is, look, check that out. Charging, voltage, normal. You see that? There it is. Cranking test, cranking normal, and battery now, 100%. Link to this is going to be in the description if you guys want to check it out. If not, it's still going to be there. Pretty cool little tool. As long as the paper doesn't get jammed, I'm okay with it. So there you have it, 2007 Kia Sportage bad alternator. That's gonna be it for this one. I'll see you on the next one.
I just went in there, and Hector is gonna be running 3 Honda Civics with spoon engines.